Go to line number 6 and speak with the NDP member of the House of Assembly, elected in and serving the folks of St. John's North. Hello, Dale Kirby, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy.
How are you?
Good, thanks. I just wanted to call and add my concern, I guess, to what's happened with the employment assistance services providers across the province. I did write to the minister about this last week after speaking to a number of these agencies over time, or individuals who work for them. And on Friday morning, as you know, there was a statement issued indicating that the funding would be cut to save funds effectively. And it seems unusual to me that the minister is expecting, I believe it's 14 career work centres, more or less 14 government agencies to take the place of these 70-odd ones that are out there. But I think one of the things that really needs to be pointed out that a number of these agencies specialize in providing people with exceptional problems services, people with exceptional problems in gaining employment, and they have expertise in providing these services in particular areas. And one of the areas, if you look down through the list, I don't know if you've reviewed it or not, but several dozen of those groups and not-for-profits provide employment services to persons with disabilities, with developmental disabilities or physical disabilities. And so I guess it really begs the question, what's going to happen now? Who's going to be able to provide these sorts of specialized employment assistance services to those persons with disabilities? And I was just at an event this morning where somebody who's an advocate for people with disabilities raised that very question. Saving measure here. There's no real explanation as to why they're doing this and how it's going to be done, and how people, especially in smaller rural areas, are going to get the same level of services. We haven't seen the report from Mr. Noseworthy's project that he was up to last year, so it's really hard to know what the argument is, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you that point because we all really need to see that, given the controversy surrounding it and the way it was kind of about selecting Mr. Noseworthy. That report's very important. The problem with the price tag, everything involved, Dale, I'll give you that one without opposition. But I do think that when you recognize a niche focus that those folks did indeed have, whether it be people with disabilities or other groups, then we have to find a way to ensure that those groups don't get left behind. I think when we refer to those EAS positions as having served the masses and the numbers of people looking for those services compared to the number of people we had filling those positions, I think it can be rightfully come to the conclusion that some of those jobs are unnecessary.
Well, one might come to that conclusion, but I'd challenge that and say, I mean, some of these groups were targeted at, if you look at John Howard and providing services to ex-offenders, I mean, will we rather that people who get out of the prison system have an opportunity to get a job, or do we want them to have no opportunity to get a job and perhaps become repeat offenders? I mean, there were services there for people for Aboriginal people, for so-called youth at risk. So young people are already at risk of dropping out of the labor market and perhaps worse. So I don't think you can lump them all together as a group. I think you really got to take the microscope out and look down at what was being done. And I don't hear any of that coming from the minister in this instance. I just hear that the funding's been cut. They're all being treated the same, and you can look elsewhere more or less. And I mean, I know that our public servants do good work, but I can't see 14 agencies performing jobs that were provided by these 70-odd, and like I said, in one instance, several dozen agencies that were providing services to persons with disabilities of varying sorts. So,
yeah, I'll concede all those points. When we have groups like John Howard and Youth at Risk and all that stuff, you're right. There's no one can argue with any merit that we do not need those services provided. Whether or not there are ways to do that with less bodies and then consequently less costs, I think that's legitimate. And based on those or these reports, then we can have a detail-based discussion, which I think is worthy.
I think you're quite right, though. I mean, you're right. We can always do things more efficiently, I think. I mean, I think we always have to have a can-do attitude in terms of finding ways to provide the same level of service with less money, if possible, right? But that's not always possible.
No, and I mean, of course, that's the realities, right? Sometimes, no matter how you try to find efficiencies, it might not be possible. And then that's its own fact that we can discuss openly. I mean, do I remember the government saying we're not going to get a look at this nosworthy report because it was only entered in as a draft? Is that what I remember?
I don't know where it is now. I know that the suggestion was sort of you're not going to get it unless you submit an access to information request. I've more or less given up on that process. I mean, even before Bill 29, I was getting back pages worth of toner, so I'm not really sure if it's worth it to even request it through that channel. But considering how much the taxpayer's on the hook for that, I mean, you'd think the minister would just openly offer it up the same way the Child and Youth Advocate opened some of her books this morning and made things clear and apparent to people. That's really the job of the minister, really, is to explain their decisions or spending and so on. It's not very much to ask. We're paying for it. You're paying for it.
Oh, I want to see it. Oh, I'm with you 100% on that one. I want to see it. If people only knew through every avenue that government deals with the tens of millions of dollars of reports that are up there collecting dust, that are paperweights, that we have never seen or read or discussed the merits, we'd all be disgusted.
No, I think that we really need to have a better explanation as to what's going on here. And I don't think, one of the things that I pointed out to the minister in my letter last week is that it's surprising that that the department really didn't go out of its way to really engage with these groups before basically closing up shop. I mean, Mr. Noseworthy did this whole project. I mean, there was only a really superficial engagement of those agencies through that whole process. That doesn't make any sense considering they've been carrying about half of the weight or more over a long period of time.
Dale, on that point, I will agree with you without hesitation. It's an important report. It has people's jobs and their livelihood on the line. It also has those who they were providing service to left in a lurch, possibly. So I'm with you. I'd like to see the report, and then we can dig down all the way through it and identify the niche needs, the groups, and whether or not they have any services provided. Anything else, sir, before I take a break?
No, thank you for your time.
I appreciate your call.
Have a good one.
You too, Dale. Bye-bye. Dale Kirby, NDP, member of the House, St. John's North.